Welcome back. Now, some are saying it was down to the wire right before the deadline, before a shutdown of our government. We passed the budget. Joining us to talk about that, Senate President Warren Peterson. Mr. President, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So let's talk about this let's go back to what happened before we get into what's in this. So originally the House passed a budget. They sent it over to you guys to review. You passed your budget. It was much different. But yours was more in line with what the governor was willing to sign. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, we had started the budget process before the House. As we were getting close to release it, they went ahead and put together a budget that they sent out. Really, the difference was just kind of the process. So we had a budget that had capacity for the House. It had capacity for the Senate. We had House member asks in there, Democrats and Republicans. We had senators, Republicans and Democrats, and we had the governor's input. So our budget had capacity for everybody. The difference was the House moved forward with just a Republican-only House budget that only had House Republicans on it. So it didn't have the House Democrats. It didn't have the Senate Republicans. It didn't have the Senate Democrats or the governor. So that was kind of the first phase of budgeting that went
But
forward.
in everything else, it's the way the machine works is that everybody's got to agree, because if the governor's not willing to sign it, it doesn't matter how good that budget looks to maybe you and I. If she's not willing, then it's kind of a moot point. And that was the big concern, wasn't it? That she said early on, there's no way she's signing that budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Republican-only budget from the House was never really a real option. And I mean,
given if you could do whatever you wanted, it would be a different budget.
Oh, of course, yeah. So our budget, of course, was it represented a consensus. Again, it had House, it had Senate. It was acknowledging House, Senate, and governor. Theirs was just basically acknowledging just their caucus, and that's why they knew too. It was just really ceremonial, something that they tried to do to show that they, what they could put forward.
And I think the concern from a lot of people is that it was so late in the game that happened. Does that make sense? That when you're running up to the deadline, the fiscal year is ending June 30th, and when you're that late into June and you're sending over a budget, that ceremonial or not, you're kind of running out of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something like that should be done in January and February. In fact, Speaker Ntoma and I did something similar in February. The first session, we put up a baseline budget because we were worried about, how to deal with divided government. Yeah, doing it at the last second like that was really not a good idea.
So let's talk a little bit about what ended up being in it. And so how close to the original budget that you sent over stayed in there, and what compromises had to happen to get it through and get the governor to sign it?
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing, is that the final budget was really ended up being exactly like our original budget is introduced. So we introduced a budget on our side. Some things were removed because some senators voted no. It went over to the House. When the House picked it back up, they just added back this stuff in. They did change some projections as far as spending to make it look like there was less spending. But the reality is the final budget was very close, almost identical to the original budget that we introduced, which says that we hit the sweet spot. We had the consensus right for the House, the Senate, and the governor, both parties.
When you look at the things that are in it, increased spending K through 12 education, increased spending for infrastructure and equipment for DPS, what other things in that budget would you say are the highlights that voters need to know about?
Yeah, no, I think really the core functions of government and really the bipartisan areas where we agree with Democrats on, we increased public safety, we increased funding to the border, we did 5% pay raises for all sworn state law enforcement officers. We invested in equipment and buildings. We did infrastructure, transportation. We did K-12. And then we even had a tax cut in there for small businesses. So we really hit the core functions of government, and then we took care of our small businesses as well.
Being an East Valley person like you are, with the massive expansion of the East Valley, how important is that 24, that, the infrastructure needed for the growth that you're seeing?
Yeah. It's critical. Arizona has done a really good job of planning, transportation planning. And every year we've been looking at ways that we can make sure that we're supplementing, helping SR 24. They do have funding that comes from, Prop 400 and from their local revenues, so that's good, but it's good for us to also do some supplementals as we can.
All right, want to take a look in a moment. I'd like to take a look at moving forward because obviously January pick it up again.
Yeah.
So what's going to look like for next year? We're also going to talk about some of the laws that were passed here in the state of Arizona that you can expect that are going into effect. We'll do that in a minute. Coming up, some of the new